calls it I think of it as a whale though, but it's not, maybe I'm not saying it right.
Well, maybe if you show me on the paper I could.
It's the top view of it. It's just right
Chiropractors
this
like to
area
work on the
through here.
sacroiliac joint.
Huh?
I said chiropractors like to work on the sacroiliac joint or the pelvis.
Which is what he calls the whaley bone.
Okay.
So it's the sacroiliac.
And that's the one that works like a hinge.
And that's the one that's working like a hinge.
Yep, and that it works the hardest out of all the pieces of the horse.
Okay. So then that's really, the muscle has to be in place too and strengthened correctly to get the balance through the hind leg.
Exactly. So if you think of those little snakes that I pass around, if you look at them really closely, some of the vertebrae in the snakes are like fused together and they don't have a lot of movement. So when your horse has similar problems like that, when they have parts of their body that don't move as well as the others, it starts to affect their hind legs. So any pattern that the spine is having, then the hind legs will follow suit, because our spine dictates how our body works, right? That's where all of our posture comes from, is our spine.
And when you were talking about like at the trot where the horse's back legs step into the footprints of the front legs, that's tracking up, right?
Yep. Okay. That would be tracking up. And if you find that the horse oversteps with those hind legs, it might be that his shoulders are restricted and that he can't step far enough forward with the shoulders to get those front feet out of the way. So there's all kinds of different patterns that are happening with the horse. It's sort of like if we sit at a computer at a desk all day, it's pretty soon we turn into a turtle, right? Turn into a turtle. And when you go out to ride your horse, you still feel like a turtle, but you have to find a way to use your core so that you can stand up straight again. Otherwise, pretty soon your horse will be like tripping, like, why are you leaning forward? Why are you leaning forward?
So let me ask you then on the footprints, I'd always heard for a good dressage horse, they would like them to overstep that front foot with the engagement. So is that what they're looking at and then later on working on the shoulders, or is there a possibility of a problem? You know, what is the ideal?
Uh-huh. Well, that is hard to say because everyone has a different opinion, right?
Yeah.
But that's a complicated question. I can help you answer it though. There's two different styles of dressage happening now. There's modern dressage and classical dressage. So modern dressage is only concerned about the horse's head and neck set.
Is that what do they call that? That's severe.
Hyperflexion?
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's a term for that.
It's roll curve. We don't have to go there right now. But the classical dressage is concerned about the horse's hindquarters.
Right.
And the difference is that the way a horse moves without any rider at all is that they engage their hindquarters first before they do any other thing. So that's why the classical dressage has less of a negative impact on the horse's body over time because we're using the horse in a way that he's meant to be used. When the hindquarters are engaged, then his back is able to lift up and support the rider.
So ideally, in order to keep your horse sound, you want to go towards more classical if you were doing dressage.
Right.
Or if you were doing something along that line, and pick a horse that is more capable and easier to do it than trying to force one that's into a frame.
Yes, but it's really hard to ride correct classical dressage. I mean, all of us are just trying to stay on at this point, right? so there's a big rift happening right now, and that's kind of a messy topic, but the goal of my presentation is just to get people thinking about how the horse would move without any rider at all.
Because isn't Lake Erie one of the colleges that studies that with the dressage and movements and?
Well, I studied horses in business, so
Okay.
it was a bit different. There's 3 different majors, but their focus is more on horse care than riding styles.
Okay.
But if you look at the way that Western people are riding, if you look at the way that Buck Brannaman rides, or the way that John Lyons or any of the older time folk, they're using the horse in a way that works for him and the rider. It's not just about the rider. So really what I'm trying to get everyone to think about is if you are doing things with your horse in mind, he's going to have a better chance of succeeding with you. It's kind of like the way that a football player would have to train certain muscles to perform their task, but we use different muscles in riding. So every horse discipline uses different muscles, but the end result is the same when the real professionals do it. The horse floats across the ground, like they were saying, instead of pounding the ground when they go around the ring or something like that. But
I don't mean to make it complicated.
it's okay. No, those are great questions. Is there anything else that people are wondering about when their horse is moving?
Well, the new dressage tests now, they're one of the big catch terms in the new dressage test is it's not just judging the horse, it's judging the horse and the rider. And the term now is riding in harmony. And that sounds like what you're talking about. And there's also a new book out called When Two Spines Align.
Yep.
And I think that again is focusing on that harmony. And they say that when it works, if you see a really good dressage rider, it's like, it's one body. And what do they call that, a minotaur?
A centaur.
Centaur,
Yeah.
yes, that's what it looks like. And because it's two bodies, one spine.
That's really hard to do.
Minotaurs would do it wrong, because that's
Oh,
all that.
that's right, okay, good. I've been reading too much astrology.
So I guess now I can move on to the 3 characteristics that are going to help everyone obtain that perfect ride every time. So I've written them up here. You probably already read them. It might be kind of small. But the first thing that we mentioned before is to move the hindquarters. You're really concerned about covering ground with your horse. Remember that you can't get to Kentucky by going 10 miles an hour. So think about that when you're riding up to a fence or when you're riding just from letter C to letter A around the ring, Cover ground. You want to get somewhere when you're working.
That's easier said than done.
Use your legs. Yep, it's pretty hard. So the next really important thing to getting that perfect ride is to have rhythm and coordination. So it doesn't only depend on you. Your horse has to have independent balance. So it's helpful to know how they balance and how they have rhythm. So our rhythm would just be kind of like 1 and 2, right? Just walking with 2 legs. But a horse's is much more complicated. So in the walk, they have a 4-beat gait, which everyone can feel that when they're riding. But if you think of it as 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, you can kind of get the feel for that smooth rocking motion that the horse has when they can use their hind end to push them forward. And the rhythm, it's really easy to find rhythm if you listen to music while you're riding. So there's dressage tests where you do a certain test to the music, but even if you just turn on the radio while you're riding and you listen while you're working, you're gonna have an easier time of finding your horse's rhythm, and pretty soon they'll start to be in time with the music. You might even get a little bit more pep in your horse's step. So that's good. Yeah. So that would help you to understand the rhythm, and each horse has their own natural rhythm, kind of like one person might be extroverted or another introverted. A horse has a different rhythm to their body as you're working. So you might notice that if you ride more than one in a day. The other most important thing to have when you're working with a horse is to have the symmetrical lateral bends. And the reason for that is mostly because it's kind of like if you were, I'm trying to think of an example that would make a lot of sense. So if you were writing a paper and you've been writing this essay for an hour already, and your hand's getting really tired, so that your wrist really hurts. So that's kind of like a repetitive motion injury, even if it's very slight. So really you would want to be able to write with your left hand so that you could continue your essay for the next hour that you have to write it for the test. but because we're not all ambidextrous, it's hard to switch hands like that. But we need our horses to be able to travel in both directions. And if they can't bend both ways, it's really hard for them to travel in both ways. So this, you might experience this if your horse has a difficult time picking up the left lead, but it's really easy for them to pick up the right lead. So some of the services that I offer specialize in working with that side-to-side lateral movement of the horse. And I would do that on the ground. But you can do that when you're riding too, and your trainers will really be able to help you with that. And Pony Club is a great avenue for learning how to obtain these features with your horse, these qualities. So you guys are really on the right track already if you want to have that perfect ride. All your information is in your Pony Club manual. It really is. So when we're looking at the horse's balance, and we're looking at how they're out of balance, it helps to clarify why they act a certain way when they're being ridden. So some people say, oh, my horse doesn't want to go forward. Well, there's lots of reasons why that might be, but the simplest reason would be that they're not using their hind end enough to cover ground and push themselves forward. I guess I should bring a video of a horse walking the next time so that everyone can see these things while I'm working or talking to you guys. I know everyone's got horses running in their head, but sometimes it's easier to look at one than in real life. Yeah, there's so I did one there. So do you guys have any difficulty with your own horses when you're riding? Is there anything that gets you every time that you say, I can never get this right? What do you feel like that? Or do you have any? Yeah?
So when I try to engage my horse's hindquarters to get them to move more forward, I always use the outside shoulder. So that's something when I'm going to the right, his left shoulder always tries to pop out, and when I lose focus on that and try to push him forward from behind, I always use the shoulder.
Okay. That's interesting. So that could be some sort of an alignment thing that's going on, but it really might be, let's see. So when the horse's body is bent around our leg, like we think of our leg as a post and the horse bends around it, so their inside hind leg has to reach farthest and underneath the horse, and that would keep their shoulder from going too far out. So one way that you might be able to correct that without having to think about it a lot would be to think more about your horse's hindquarters when you're riding, and if you give your inside aid when your horse lifts their inside leg off the ground, and give your outside aid when your horse lifts their outside leg off the ground, and kind of get into their gentle swinging rhythm, pretty soon you'll be able to have more control over that sort of thing. And you'll get a feel for the timing of things. And that's an interesting problem. It's great that you can recognize that at this age, because I didn't know that until I was 15 or something, you know? And it's a really hard thing to think about because you're so concerned about your own body when you're riding. But it's really important to know how your horse responds. That's a pretty good insight.
No! I think sitting the canter is one of the hardest things. And my horse is getting better, and I'm sort of getting better. I can do it. I can't sit it. For me, it's no flexibility in my hip flexors. My hip flexors don't flex. So that makes it difficult. And I'm sure it makes it difficult for him because I throw him off balance. And this is why I am so aware of our body position in relationship to our horse's body position. What we do can throw them off, then they get thrown off and they throw us off more. And it's just this vicious cycle.
It's easy to blame it on the horse though, right?
That's what most people do, but like I said, that's why I asked that question earlier. 90% of our horses' movement problems are caused by the rider. That's how much we affect their way of going. And, just working